If you've survived abuse, know this: your feelings are valid, and it was never your fault. The effects of abuse run deeper than many people realize, altering not just emotions, but the very structure of the brain. Understanding these changes is crucial, not only for survivors seeking healing, but also for those who want to support them. In this video, we'll explore what abuse does to the brain and why recovery is both possible and necessary. Abuse, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, leaves scars that can't always be seen, but they shape how we think, feel, and interact with the world. When someone experiences prolonged abuse, their brain adapts in ways meant to protect them. But over time, these adaptations can lead to challenges with anxiety, memory, emotional regulation, and decision-making. Let's break down what actually happens inside the brain. The brain's alarm system, always on high alert. One of the biggest changes occurs in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting danger. Normally, it helps regulate the fight or flight response, activating only when real threats appear. But in an abusive environment, the amygdala becomes overactive, constantly sounding the alarm even when there is no immediate danger. This leaves survivors in a near-permanent state of hypervigilance, where even small, everyday situations can feel overwhelming. For some, this heightened alertness means constantly feeling anxious, struggling to relax, or even being easily startled. For others, it may result in emotional numbness, a way for the brain to avoid an endless flood of distress signals. Either way, the effects are profound and persistent. The prefrontal cortex, weakened decision-making and self-control. While the amygdala becomes overactive, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, problem-solving, and emotional control, becomes less active. This imbalance can make it harder for survivors to regulate emotions, leading to difficulties in calming down after stress, making sound decisions, or trusting their own judgment. It's not that survivors are irrational, it's that their brains have been rewired for survival, not long-term decision-making. This is why people who have experienced abuse may struggle with impulsivity, self-doubt, or difficulty setting boundaries. The brain's ability to pause and process before reacting is impaired, making emotional regulation a daily challenge. Memory and learning. The damage to the hippocampus abuse also affects the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and learning. Studies show that chronic stress can shrink the hippocampus, making it harder to retain and recall memories accurately. This is why some survivors have gaps in their memory or struggle to piece together past events. Trauma memories are often stored differently than normal memories. Some details may be vivid, while others are fragmented or missing entirely. This isn't a sign of dishonesty or exaggeration. It's the brain's way of protecting itself from pain. Unfortunately, this can lead to situations where survivors are doubted or questioned about their experiences, even though their brains are simply responding to trauma in a natural way. Emotional blunting. When feeling nothing becomes a defense mechanism. For many survivors, emotions can feel overwhelming, but in some cases, the brain responds by shutting down emotions altogether. This is known as emotional blunting. Instead of experiencing joy, sadness, or anger, a person may feel disconnected from their own emotions, struggling to engage with life or form deep relationships. This numbness is a protective mechanism. If the brain has learned that feeling too much is dangerous, it may try to shield itself by feeling nothing at all. While this can help someone survive during the abuse, it often becomes a long-term issue, making it hard to reconnect with emotions even in safe situations. Emotional dysregulation. When feelings take over. Another effect of trauma is emotional dysregulation. When emotions swing between extremes with little control. One moment, a survivor might feel fine, and the next, they may be overwhelmed with sadness, anger, or fear. This happens because the brain's usual braking system, the prefrontal cortex, isn't working as well as it should, while the emotional centers of the brain are in overdrive. This is why some survivors may seem overreactive or too sensitive to those who don't understand trauma. In reality, their brains are struggling to regain balance after years of being trained to expect danger, impulsivity, and risk-taking, a search for control. The damage to the brain's decision-making areas can also lead to impulsivity and risky behaviors. Studies have shown that survivors of abuse are more likely to engage in substance use, reckless decisions, and self-destructive habits. This isn't because they don't care. It's often an unconscious attempt to regain control over their own experiences or to numb the pain they carry. Survivors may not always recognize these patterns in themselves, but understanding how the brain processes trauma can help explain why certain behaviors emerge and why they can be so hard to change without support. Depression and anxiety, the lingering effects of trauma. Many survivors experience long-term mental health struggles, including depression and anxiety. The constant state of fear and hypervigilance puts immense strain on the brain, making it harder to find joy, motivation, or peace. Over time, this can develop into clinical depression, generalized anxiety, or even PTSD. Studies show that people who have experienced abuse are at a higher risk of developing phobias, eating disorders, and even suicidal thoughts. But while trauma reshapes the brain, it does not mean healing is impossible. The power of healing. Rewiring the brain. The good news is that the brain is adaptable. It can rewire itself with time, effort, and the right support. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and heal, means that survivors are not permanently broken. Therapy, mindfulness, supportive relationships, and self-care can all help rebuild the brain's connections, restoring balance over time. If you are a survivor of abuse, remember this: your reactions, emotions, and struggles are not your fault. Your brain has done what it needed to do to survive. But you are not stuck. Healing is possible, and with the right support, you can take back control of your mind and your life. How can we better support those who are struggling with the hidden impacts of trauma? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on mental health and recovery. You are not alone, and your journey toward healing is just beginning.